We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, and 1410 KERI. Hey, we're syndicated, Clay.
It's the only syndicated show in Kern County.
How about that? So, question. Was the cost of electing Barack Obama president too high for the African-American community in America? Has he lived up to the promises he's made? These questions and more are answered in a book, The Price of the Ticket, Barack Obama and the Rise and Decline of Black Politics, by Professor Fredrick Harris, who's our guest by phone. Professor Harris, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thanks for inviting me on.
Well, as I was telling you off the air, my copy of your book is going to get here tomorrow, but I've done some research on it, and I'm really fascinated by this. It's an interesting premise, and it begs the question: Is Barack Obama taking the black vote for granted, and does he figures he's going to get it anyways, and he just isn't living up to what he said he was going to do for the African American community?
Well, actually, I wouldn't want to say that he's taking the African American community for granted. At least I hope not. I really do believe that the president hasn't had the courage to talk about issues as it relates to racial inequality or the persistence of racial inequality in the country. And I think what's needed, as I have written about and in various forums, is that he needs to be pushed like other important constituencies have been successful in pushing the president on promises, particularly the Latino community around immigration reform, the spectacular campaign of the gay and lesbian community, for instance, and nudging the president along around equity, around issues around gay and lesbian issues. And so I just think that the African American community has been mostly protecting the president and not pressuring him to come through on some of the important promises he made during the election.
But has he taken advantage of that?
No, I don't think he's. Has he taken advantage? Well, in some ways, yes, I think he has. Because in many ways, if a constituency gives you 90% of their support, and they are mostly protecting you and not pressuring you, you really don't have an incentive to follow through on some of the promises that you made. And I think for most of your listeners, they probably don't know of some of those promises. And so, for instance, in 2007, he gave this interesting speech on criminal justice reform at historically black college, Howard University in Washington, D.C. And he gave that speech primarily because he was pressured by activists to speak out. There was a case in Gina, Louisiana, about the unfair accusation of these African-American youth in a schoolyard brawl, and activists who were marching there were asking the question, where is Barack Obama, the candidate? Barack Obama also was trailing Hillary Clinton among black voters. And again, this is in 2007, before the Iowa victory, so people's memories may be fading. But in that speech, he made some bold proposals. One of those proposals actually was a federal-level racial profiling act that he said he would push for, initiate, and we haven't heard anything about it since he's got into office.
Well, one of the comments that I saw, one of the reviews of the book, was the comment that he won as an African American only by denying he was a candidate of African Americans. Is that a fair assessment? Is that something from your book, or is that from the reviewer?
No, it's a description of the book and all the contents of the book. And so what we see here is it's a process that's been going on for decades. It's political scientists refer to this campaign style as de-racialization. It's the idea that in order to get whites to support a minority candidate, that they have to diffuse issues around race. They mostly talk about issues of racial unity, but don't talk about particular policy issues that may be targeted toward African American communities in order to not to scare off white voters. So in many ways, we see this as a contradiction. I mean, there's the pride of Barack Obama being elected the country's first black president, but when it comes to substantive policy issues that are specific to the needs of the African American community, there's mostly silence in the administration around these issues.
We're having a conversation with Professor Fredrick Harris, author of The Price of the Ticket, Barack Obama and the Rise and Decline of Black Politics.
Professor, this is Clay. I have to tell you, I have a lot of problems with Barack Obama. But one of those problems is that he makes a video when he addresses it to the black community and he says, you need to vote for me. Now, do you think if Mitt Romney made a video saying that for all you whites, you need to vote for me, there wouldn't be a backlash?
Well, the thing is that constituencies are very important because he didn't only make a video targeted toward African Americans. I have problems with that video, but not for the same reasons that you do. He also made videos targeted to Jewish communities to talk about his stance on support for Israel. He also made a video targeted to the gay and lesbian community about his policy successes. He also made a video targeted to liberal women around his support for reproductive health. So I don't think we should sort of just single out black people as not being targeted to. And we have to keep in mind, African Americans are the most loyal constituencies of the Democratic Party, the most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party. But my issue with that is that video was that it didn't have any much policy content to it, particularly around issues targeted to the African American community, nor did it explain some of the modest successes that the president has had around issues. For instance, a historic settlement for black farmers. And so, in many ways, getting to the previous question, it does have a sort of a taken for granted tone to it because it doesn't have much policy content. And so, on the right side, for instance, I'm sure there would be videos targeted to different constituencies of the Republican Party to tout or to make promises about what a Romney administration would do. So that would be my response to that.
Well, that's a good response, and I have to agree with most of it. I do think that if you go back to the prior election, that Hillary had the lead, as you know, and was doing extremely well. But I think that the Republican community actually helped to get Obama elected, especially the Anybody But Hillary campaign that went on with Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we got Anybody But Hillary, and I'm personally not a big fan of Barack Obama. And you talked about some successes. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know, has he had any major successes that are going to stick or have stuck?
Well, we'll find out whether there will be a major success soon with the health care decision in the Supreme Court, Obamacare, as it's called. This is supposed to be his crowning achievement. He spent over 2 years pushing it with a lot of compromise or attempts at compromise. And so, and I would like to say, for instance, around some of the issues, there's the divide, as I talk about in the book, between universal policies that will help everyone, as the president is part of his governing strategy, particularly when he wants to avoid talking about race. He talks about, things like health care, which would benefit many in the African American community. 1/5 of African Americans are uninsured, so clearly that would benefit. But I don't think the legislation will survive. And so for African Americans, there have been modest things that have been done. He's closed the gap, not eliminated the gap in the sentencing around crack and powder cocaine. Scientists have demonstrated that there is no difference in its effects on individuals. So there's been this sentencing of ratio of that was previously 100 to 1. It's down to 18 to 1, but it shouldn't be a disparity at all. And so that's one of the things that the president has done that would target communities of color who are subjected to this discriminatory gap in sentencing.
When we get back from the break, Professor, one question I have for you is what you think the cost is to the African American community of Obama's victory. So let's tackle that when we get back, okay?
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.